Hey, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, ladies here on the stage. It's a pleasure hosting you all. I have a set of questions. I'm very curious on the Industry 5.0 and what all of your takes, and we'll also have a small Q&A at the end of it if audience has any questions. So for a lot of you guys who are wondering what is Industry 5.0, are we still not in the Industry 4.0? Let me give you a quick opening remark on or a briefer on that. Industrialization essentially started with the steam engine revolution, right? And then we moved on to the electricity and assembly line. That is termed as the Industry 2.0. Then came in the Industry 3, which is essentially looking at using integrated chips and internet that enabled the globalization. And Industry 4.0 is where we are typically supposed to be in now, which is to bring in all the digitized effort to bring in higher automation and innovation into the industry. That we're looking at the AI, ML, you're talking about IoT. But what we sort of realize in Industry 4.0, why it is not probably the best, in the best mode is the humanization is missing in that. So that's where the thought leaders are talking about today at Industry 5.0, which is essentially to look at how can we bring in rehumanization into the industry, how can we look at bringing in a lot more acceptability of human plus automation, and not just automation, right? We don't want the automation to drive away humans. So we look at cobot and not robot. Cobot is collaborative robot and not just a typical mechanized world, right? I think a lot of us are also worried about data privacy and a lot of other AI biases that can creep into the industry. Now, it's very important for a lot of industry players as well as startups to start talking about this, to start debating about this, to start contributing into the Industry 5.0 thought process, theory, and take it to the action, right? So I'll open up with Shruti. Shruti has been with Cisco. So Shruti, what are your thoughts on Industry 5.0 when you think of it? Because Cisco has been a leader in the communication world, and it has gone through its own journey of hardware plus software. What are your thoughts on the new element of Industry 5.0?
So here, rather than talk about it from Cisco perspective, I think I would approach it from the perspective of being a human being, from the perspective of being a woman, the perspective of being a mother. So I think that's where I want to kind of bring in a different dimension to this. Because we are looking at a world of machines which is now able to act like humans. We're talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we think machines should understand human language. But are we thinking machines should understand adult language? But research is telling us that that is really, really difficult. And research is telling that it is much easier if we make the machines think like child. And that's, I would say, the starting point for us to start thinking in this direction. How can we make the machines and all the Industry 5.0 components think from a child perspective? And this perspective encompasses a couple of things. One, there is huge amount of learning because they are like a fresh canvas, a fresh slate, and we are getting a very new perspective added on to this entity. Number two, they are very curious. They hardly have any data, and their decision making is based on this data. So this will add a lot more of fresh perspective to it. Number three, this is a system that's going to grow. Right? This is a system right now, it may be small, a node, but very soon it will grow into a big tree and have a huge impact. Now, I want to combine all these three elements, which will then become the big 5.0 tree or a palace or a forest that it may soon be. So I would approach, rather than an industry perspective, from a human perspective and say, I would start off looking at it as a child and grow it into what the potential may be, which may be even beyond our wildest dreams.
Wonderful, wonderful thought on looking at industry with bringing in the child kind of thought process in that. It's a wonderful thought. Thank you so much, Shruti. Moving to you, Kuppu. Kuppu, you work with a very globalized entity and one of the leaders in the startup world, right? So you also interact with a lot of startups in your role. Where have you thought in your conversation, have you heard of Industry 5.0? What are your thoughts around that? And also with your interaction with the startups, are they also open to this?
Thanks, Santosh. That's a very important question. And I really like that we are talking about it at this time when we already assume that we are in a post-COVID world. Look at all of us sitting without masks like nothing happened. I want to take a very serious moment to pause and reflect about how life was in the past 2 years that we all were impacted with a pandemic that arrived so fast and seems to have left so soon. It's a good time. I'm getting goosebumps because it's never a moment to think about the future for prosperity without having the emotional part of it as attached to technology that gets the center of attention. Now, when we talk about Industry 5.0, I would still think we have a lot of conversations that have just begun about Industry 4.0 because, we've been talking day in, day out of how many large and small companies are going through the digitization process, almost by force, not by choice, like it's the direction that they have to take. Now, when you put so much attention to technology at the center, and we're talking about Industry 5.0, where I was reading up on what the European Union is saying, what's the core message that we want to achieve via 5.0 seems to be the well-being of the worker. Now, this has sparked a lot of thoughts I'm still processing where I want to share with you all. And I would also love to know from the entrepreneurs, the startup founders here from multiple angles. One, like Shruti said, what does it mean for posterity? When we are long gone and dusted, who's going to walk the earth? Now, the future that we are imagining, is it even relatable to this future generation? And when we talk about relatability, is it measurable? Are we talking to people who are going to walk this planet Earth 40 years down the lane and find what is the point that we can do as a generation that is driving innovation in terms of contribution? And when we talk about contribution, it leads me to a very important point, that's inclusivity. When we talk about, we heard Physics Wala founder, we heard multiple other founders. As someone who runs the Zoho for Startups program, I work with startup founders day in, day out. And I'm using this opportunity to put this question in front of everyone. Whenever we do something consciously as part of founders, the power that you all have to drive innovation. Is inclusivity a default thought that comes to you every single time? When you talk about student entrepreneurs, when you talk about disrupting the future, are you able to think about all of us women? Are you able to think about the generation that's already old? Are you able to relate some of your innovations to the next generation that's going to come? Are you aware of your unconscious biases and conscious biases, and are you working towards breaking this with the power that you have and the responsibility that you will bring to it? The question that I wake up with every day is, am I able to envision this with technology as a means to drive this thought to everyone? Because the foundation has to be very clear. Why are we all in such a hurry, I think, not slowing down after a pandemic that's been so life-changing, that's just unearthed and showed us how vulnerable we are, how small we are. So it's important to bring a philosophical angle when we talk about well-being, because mental health is so much spoken about. It feels very shallow when we go through so much stress, when we don't understand the kind of things that we take in our hands and work with. So the final point I want to say is, when we work with startups via the Zoho for Startups program, offering various apps, the thought always that comes to mind that's very persistent is, how do we talk about well-being as part of culture? How we bring in inclusivity? How we can have more diverse people than your first 50 paying customers? Who do you envision? Can we have more forums that will bring forward uncomfortable conversations that cause a lot of inconvenience, yet we get to speak our mind and heart very, very clearly? Because when we are talking about Industry 4.0 and 5.0, how does it free up our time? How does technology truly enables our life to free up our time, go look for those intellectual conversations? And I'm a big proponent of emotional intelligence. I want to tell the startup founders, if you have access to knowledge, Seek that knowledge that will make you more self-aware. Come up with difficult questions that make you feel inconvenient and raise your hands and ask those questions to people to be more emotionally intelligent, because IQ has been taken care of. You all are doing what you're doing because you're brilliant, you're capable of bringing the disruption. But when we talk about emotional intelligence, that's the core foundation of what the future is going to be. And we know nothing about what COVID has impacted. We're still figuring out, right? I'm talking with a lot of self-doubts. The kind of power that we have to represent via the program. Are we being useful? Are we driving enough conversations around what the future should look like? Can we be comfortably vulnerable, saying, I don't know what I don't know? Can I have more people in this conversation to think about the future and bring in more people we never thought should be part of the panel? Like Shruti said, the next generation could be here. There are so many student entrepreneurs out there. What does Industry 5.0 and well-being mean to them when we're still figuring out? India is talking about moonlighting still. We're talking about so many side jobs because what you're doing mainly is not soul satisfying. So multiple thoughts come into mind. You have to connect the dots actively, and many of these are not measurable. Technology is a means. You can't measure persistence. You can't measure resilience. You cannot measure how self-aware you are. So it's time that we bring in the philosophical angle, or what we call each of us our own, right? The spiritual quotient to what we do, and feel grounded than putting ourselves in the race and not find future to be something that's not relatable at all. It still cannot be a question mark for long. So we have to drive more active conversations, and I'm super happy that we have this topic today and you as the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. That sort of sums up a lot of thoughts around well-being, emotional intelligence, and looking at persistently how can I build a value system within the organization and build it as a culture and take it forward to the whole team. And I'll move on to Madhurima. Madhurima, you work with a technology giant, right? So where technology is at the heart of every conversation, I believe. Now, when you talk about Industry 5.0, I think the organization Microsoft has gone through a couple of revolutions on its own. What are your thoughts around Industry 5.0? Do you think it's the right time to discuss about this currently in the market?
Thanks, Santosh, for that question. And as Kuppu and Shruti have already shared, what I look at technology is like, it's really today, as we're talking about well-being of people, the 3 P's of the triple bottom line that's talked about much today in all conversations. It's the people, profit, and planet. And the good news is it's not necessarily talked in that order. Businesses, as most of us would have read about the goal, the goal of a business is to make profits, to make money, right? But that's changing. In Industry 5.0, the focus is more on the people and on the planet and how we can use and support them and serve them to drive profits rather than just look at profits in isolation. And that's what I see today, the founders doing. They are coming up with such amazing ideas which keep this at the core, right? We have founders who think about their employees first, who think about their customers first, instead of just looking at profits. And that's the multiple stories that you all would have heard through the day-to-day. The core thing is if you keep your customers happy, if you keep your employees happy, profits will come and you will become successful. So that to me is, in a nutshell, Industry 5.0. And if you have to really differentiate, what's the difference then between 4.0 and 5.0? I think it's just, as Kuppu said, it's moved from welfare to well-being. It's moved from people serving organizations to organizations serving people. Today we all talk about hyper-personalization. That is Industry 5.0 because everything is centered towards serving the people while not forgetting the planet and just focusing on profits.
Wonderful thoughts there. So I think in all the 3 conversations that I've had so far with you all, so I see a lot of thread around artificial intelligence and hyper-personalization, right? So when we talk about AI, one of the things that even internally at Citi, what we practice is we have a very robust ethics office that looks at each and every AI piece that is built or developed, it goes through multi-layer of scrutiny before you even start using them for internal usage, right? I mean, every sector is going through its own challenges, and we want to automate as much as possible, but we're also concerned as industry leaders, we want to be sure that you don't really let any biases come into your AI, because obviously AI is built by humans. If machine learns any of the wrong biases, it will continue to propagate those and probably even amplify those biases, right? So this is a concern that the world is looking at today as artificial intelligence becomes very, very pertinent and becomes omnipresent in every part of our life. From your thoughts, Shruti, AI and ethics, right? And then add startups to that, right? For every startup, we're always looking at what's the best technology that you can build, but at the same time, are they well equipped to think on these larger global lines of, how do I inculcate ethics in my technology building process, or should they be educated? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the fact that you're asking the question itself is an important milestone. Because so far we have been talking about AI as an enabler application, AI as the next wow factor. But the fact that we are putting ethics at the intersection of AI, and I would say deliberating on it, is making us all think. Obviously, there is no right or wrong answer in all of this. As I said earlier, it is a progressive journey. And it is a longitudinal study that will definitely answer this for us as we go by. While we can take the baby steps towards this, I want to recall that in my undergrad study, in fact, I did my undergrad in computer science engineering, but we had a subject on ethics. So that was a good, I would say, from the academic point of view, from the university's design point of view, they decided that despite computer being the main core course, we wanted to give them, the students, a feel of ethics as well. So that is itself a very good thought process. On my personal interest, I went on to qualify myself with a master's in psychology. So similar to me, I'm sure many people would also have gone on and explored multi-dimensional and multifunctional streams. So convergence of these different dimensions and thought processes, with, of course, the policies and compliances which are coming in with respect to GDPR and the likes, I'm sure we will land at some pretty, I would say, a balanced intersection sometime soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shruti. Kuppu, moving on to you. You spoke about biases earlier. So AI, again, has a lot of dimensions to it and can also lead to biases that we spoke about. As a women leader in the industry, right, we always talk about getting women back into the workforce, and pandemic has actually disrupted that. Right, has actually driven away a lot of female workforce. And today, as an industry, we all see the challenge at how to get back female employees back to the organization and get them that kind of right kind of pedestal there. From your thought process, AI and gender bias, right? Is that something that the world has woken up to? Are we working on that? Is there more to be done?
Answer this from two perspectives or two realities. One, me, what role I am doing in Zoho, and as someone who is a spectator for what's happening around with the world of startups and innovation and disruption. The answers are not very different, but there is a distinct point I want to make. Inside Zoho, we have a separate department that works on AI functionalities, because we're trying to bring the stack of AI into every app that Zoho has been producing. It's called Zia, and it's Zoho's own intelligence. And we're trying to make the life of the worker easier, to make data more friendlier, and so that especially the startup entrepreneurs who are expected to be versatile and grow really fast can focus on their core job. Now, when we are humans, we are designed to be biased. So we have to first come with the acknowledgement that I'm not going to reach a place where I'm bias-free. Accepting this makes me more aware of the choice of words that I'm using, even a casual "you guys" in a room full of many women, to a more serious conversations on how smart my data samples are looking. What kind of questions that fall under the quadrant of I don't know what I don't know, and I expose myself to those situations. So you see a lot of news that's coming up when we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Like there's one example where I was preparing for a keynote for one of the conferences, and we had to talk about emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence, not versus. So the story talks about how many samples of books and movies we took from a library of movies and books. And we had to feed it into a machine based on the action of a male protagonist in a story and a female protagonist in a story. Think of a superwoman versus a Batman. The kind of quality that's been attributed to what should be a woman leader, a woman superpower versus what it takes to bring a man out there is a very simple, relatable example that I'm giving. You will be very surprised that when they started replacing some of these words or interchanging some of these words, it just didn't fit into reality. We could not imagine women in certain attributes. How are we going to, as simple as movies that we watch for entertainment and how it impacts us, the kind of books we write, if this is what our reality is, what are we going to help the machine with learning? So a lot of it is first start rewriting the story, become more comfortable with having disruption of all sorts from all kinds of people, and then look at AI from a really fresh perspective. So it's not just about talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and then get done with in terms of numbers. This is like a conscious effort we have to do every waking minute. And look at a future where you can't achieve something that's really equal because we all are made very differently. But I know I can make a lot of difference by striving to bring in that. You know, it's not just numbers. When we were talking earlier, it's not just numbers. A founder would say, oh, I have equal number of women in the organization. But look at culture. Someone said, you know, culture as a service. No, I'm canceling that conversation. Not every conversation needs to go into a business model, okay? This has to be intrinsic. The well-being first starts with a lot of inconvenient conversations, a lot of heated arguments. It's not, for example, not just bringing equal women, but you know, I met a lot of men who now say, during COVID, I have been with my family so closely that I have found this new passion where I'm a better homekeeper. It's a lot stress-free, and think about a society like that, where, you know, I can be more focused because of my spouse, between the spouse and me, I'm the more intellectual contributor. So the choice of words between who is the, who's the breadwinner for the family, to who is a more emotional, intellectual contributor, not just for the family, but as an extension to the society. So from the choice of words, from the kind of self-awareness that we bring, there's a lot of knowledge. Thanks to globalization, we have so much that has been written and spoken about emotional intelligence that I would not say it's easy, but it's becoming a little less impossible. And I'm going to show up at every platform I'm called for to represent everybody that I can talk to and influence on bringing emotional intelligence into the picture as much as I can. That's a promise that I'm giving to everyone and to myself and my 11-year-old daughter.
Wonderful. So just to add on to that thought, right? I mean, fortunately for me, my mom had got me early on into the household chores, so didn't wait for the pandemic to teach me those skills. So I've been involved, but my wife escalated that skill set, though, before pandemic, and it got further escalated with pandemic, sitting at home, right from gardening to, household stuff. Very interesting thought, and I think these thoughts resonate with a lot of audience, and taking that further step to the way that you interact, Madhurima, with startups, right? Early stage ones, you spoke about triple bottom line, right? But for a startup, it's all about survival, right? Now, as a startup, if I'm a founder, am I to look at building cutting edge technology? Am I to look at cutting edge technology plus ethics on top of it? Am I to look at plus sustainability is it going to burden the kind of thought process a founder will have? Is it even required at that early stage? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question, Santosh. And I know, when you're early stage, you're firefighting every day, every minute. All these thoughts sound like, these are first world problems. Why do I care about them? But the truth, the reality is that if you care about it today, you will survive in the long term so that you know that, your caring was enough and you had to. So it's a question of whether you are playing in the short run or whether you're there for longevity. Because as we have seen, right, it's such a sad thing that I have to draw this parallel. That is what human beings are doing today. It's all about instant gratification. We are like, we are the, whatever we call ourselves, we pride ourselves to be the best species or better than other people. So we will use the planet as we want for our personal gratification. We don't care about what will happen down the line. But we ourselves, humans, will be a species that will become extinct if we don't think about it. And it's the same thing as founders today. If you don't focus and about your customers, about your employees, you can build a great technology product. So you'll have a product, but will you have a business? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Where is the business? Is the business sustainable? Is it going to be something that will pass the rigors of time and end up giving you profits and not sleepless nights? Right? All the founders that I meet, right, in early stage, they all grapple, and I say it's fine. But look at a way you can make some positive impact, some small change that you can do, right? End of the day, all this is focusing on people. It is not that you have to go and do something drastically different or build something which will not survive or let you survive as a business. Think about it. These are the things people care about today. People are talking about Industry 5.0. People are talking about sustainability. Find a business idea there. And when you go to the boardrooms to sell your product, tell them how you are contributing to the sustainability initiative. And you will already be, lodged in their minds as somebody who's better than others because you'll stand out by caring for these things. So it's not just a question of surviving, but it's a question of surviving and thriving that comes in picture.
Very well put. Surviving plus thriving is the mantra for the startup founders, right? Taking a leaf out of your thought here, you talked about people being at the center of all the conversations or importance for the founders. Now this question is open to all three of you, whoever wants to pick this. Data privacy becomes a very important conversation in today's world, right? So there's GDPR for the Europe, but also every country is looking at their own legislation. And when we talk about rehumanization of the industry, data privacy is also very, very important for founders to look at, right? But again, as early stage founders, how much am I equipped to look at that? Am I having the capability to bring in a consultant to help me on that? Is it again a question of my survival versus a lot of these additional frills I might think as an early stage founder versus a growth stage? While it becomes very relevant for the growth stage, but from your conversations, if anyone wants to talk about Industry 5.0 with data privacy being or giving the data back to the rightful owners, not company owning it and making or looking at monetizing that data, but giving the data back to the rightful owners. Right? In your conversations with startups, if you have any thoughts around that, if you discussed, would be love to hear that.
Snap time, right? I think we should have an analogy with respect to cakes.
You're driving away the audience now.
So I don't see the likes of sustainability or data privacy as just the cream layer on top of the cake. It is an inherent process of fermentation or of things like baking powder, which makes dough a cake. If not, it will just become your old chapatis and rotis. So if you want a cake, you really have to put in the right kind of ingredients into it. And data privacy, sustainability are really those ingredients that have to make up for it. So from Cisco point of view, we take this very, very seriously, which is why we are very gung-ho on things like observability, which give us that macro picture as well as micro picture. Take the case of an e-commerce platform. which is trying to ramp up its operations in a big way. And if they want to figure out if there is some issue at some node or some geography, they are able to get that, and that is their right, that they get that not just for their own growth, but for the sake of customer experience. Because they are offering a level of service assurance to the customers as a result of this. And this takes into account the entire gamut of data privacy. We have products like Umbrella, Duo, Tetration, which is like a perfect suit that we would highly recommend some of our startup partners and even investors to take a look at. This is definitely the underlying thesis that we've built all these products on and think that it should be ingrained in every other startup portfolio.
On a lighter note, I switched off at the thought of the cake. But so over to you, Madhurima.
I'll just add to that, right? Essentially, if I have to put it in one phrase, it's not optional. Right? You have to have it. Now, linking it to your question about survival, right? It's very difficult for an individual entrepreneur or founder to think about all these regulations, know what to put in place and build the product, which is where the hyperscalers come in. Today, everybody is born in the cloud, right? If you're a healthcare startup and you're on Microsoft Cloud, Azure for healthcare, all this is taken care of. It's inbuilt, it's HIPAA compliant, it's got the security protocols in place. You just have to follow that. And at Microsoft, we even give you the knowledge, we give you the expertise. How do you work with it? So if you're an early stage startup, don't compromise on this. Go to a place where all this is set up for you. Get the knowledge, get the expertise. All you need to know is understand how to follow that and leverage it. Right? Like at Microsoft for startups, we understand it's very difficult. I've been a founder myself and I know how difficult it is to survive in early stage. So we give them a lot of credits, we give them a lot of licenses, up to $150,000 worth of cloud credits. That's huge, right? It's there. All you need to do is go and use it up. So you don't have to bypass or even question that, how do I build all these in my product? It's inbuilt. Just know that it's there and build accordingly.
Brilliantly put. I think Microsoft and some of the cloud players are leading that effort to sort of educate the founders, also give them some pre-built solutioning around that to get that kind of a broader security around the data. Thank you so much on that.
Just have like a couple of points with respect to what Zoho does. We've been speaking very vocal about it. As someone who has gone from being a microbiologist to a SaaS evangelist today, it takes a lot for me to wrap my head around some tech conversations even today. To go through a white paper on what privacy is, what data management is, what it means to keep your customers' data safe is a lot. And for someone like me, I understand what has been written in terms of whether your data is yours to keep or not when you're deciding to leave Zoho. Making very sure that we don't have third-party trackers where the customer's data, there's no backdoor. Zoho has been very clear about the best way to be sustainable and be profitable is to always put customer at the center, which in a long run helps. So we never sell data of customers. We always give the data back to them. There is very clear service level agreements written on that. And a person like me can understand and explain it to you all on what that white paper has. And it's out there. The link is for everyone to access. Because today, startups to everyone have to make a smart choice on what kind of SaaS vendor you have to bring that makes your focus back into whether you want to do your next round of pitching, or you're already getting prepared for scaling, or you're looking at going into a marketplace. Your focus has to be there. And it's a very, very lean startup most of the time at the very early stage. So it becomes very easy decision points when points like data privacy, your security, what happens to your data much later when you downgrade. All this has to be a given, like Madhurima said, it's default now. Every SaaS, every cloud, you cannot have this as that extra edge selling point. It's intrinsic, it's a given, it's a default. I look forward to more startups bringing in as part of their culture, as part of their vision and mission statement when they build something around tech.
Thank you so much for sharing about the white paper. I think there's a need to propagate that information further ahead with a larger audience as well. And I think KSM is doing a great job in bringing these kind of thought process around in the panel discussions. I'll open up for any audience questions if we have. Can we have the mic passed, please?
Hello. Okay, so like you're all people who are heading, startup ecosystems, right? So I have a question to you. Suppose someone in college comes to you with a startup. At what point do you realize, okay, so whatever he's saying, whatever idea he's conveying has some merit and is actually, gonna be a sustainable startup or is on the path of becoming a sustainable startup?
I'll probably rephrase the question. So I think his question is that if a startup from a college student comes and he pitches for you to get into your programs or look at funding, at what stage do you evaluate whether this is a startup that is adding sustainability to them and how much of it will impact your decision making? Is that?
Sort of like a framework that you use to evaluate the startup idea.
He's looking for the secret sauce on how do you evaluate startups.
No, so at Microsoft Founders Hub, we don't evaluate a startup idea as such. I truly believe that all ideas are great ideas. It's the execution that matters. And to enable the founder or the founders to get started, even at idea stage, you get $1,000 worth of credits. You start building, you start doing some tinkering around, testing, build an MVP, you get $5,000 more. You've got a product in place, you want to go to market, get your first customer, you get $25,000. So it's tiered. Literally, who today can predict that which idea is a good idea or not a good idea? Nobody, right? We've all heard Airbnb got refused 1,000 times. We've heard, Murugavel sir was just telling how many times investors refused him. Don't let anybody tell you whether the idea is good or not. Whether you can execute on that is something that's in your hand. So at Microsoft for startups at least, even if you're an idea stage startup, just a student thinking about it, you can get up to $5,000 even without incorporating a company.
We at Cisco would look at a basic incorporation of a startup. When you are registered into the system as a startup, so that's when we would look at it. And we have what is also called, I announced in the morning, Cisco STEP, Startup Engagement Platform, which does provide not just the knowledge and the know-how, but also the ability to connect with the right kind of people who can add value to your journey, be it in the technology space or say in other allied areas like marketing, legal, etc., etc. So you get access to that powerful pool of trusted people who can guide you in the right path. And I think at a growth stage, as in when you're growing from ideation, this is very, very important to pivot multiple times and get on to the right trajectory.
We have a question in the front row. Can you have the mic, please?
Yes, we have a question here. My husband does tell me I'm loud enough, so I don't need a mic, usually. My name is Seema Chaturvedi. The comments all four of you made resonated big time. So it's a comment and a question. The comment is, I love the detailed nuance that all of you spoke of, but Ms. Krishnamoorthy spoke of specifically about the equity versus equality, because we are launching a VC fund specifically for promoting gender equity and climate action. So, and in that is my question. How open are corporations to partnering with venture funds or even product ideas that are coming that measure and hold accountable, hold feet to fire, and hold them accountable for inclusivity and these are objective measures. So we have developed, for example, a gender equity citizenship score, and we want to launch it for startups. We would love to partner with the 3 of you or 4 of you in a manner that, so how open is the ecosystem of players like you?
So the minute I go back to home, we can start a conversation on this. We're at a very early stage of taking the Zoho for Startups program to the next level. I have my team right there. So we are very open to anything that would enable the ecosystem some more. So with the very early stage of partnering with the VCs, because you know how the Zoho model as a core has been working. But I have both the freedom and the responsibility that comes with it to take the next step to what it takes to make it work. So I'm looking forward to having the conversation with you.
Cisco's launched what is called an Aspire Fund, which is already a 50 million fund, especially to address such diverse causes and look at multiple dimensions as well. So they are already invested into a couple of, I would say, impact areas, and that would be the potential starting point for you to explore.
Happy to connect Seema offline on this.
To round off the conversation, I want to add, at Citi, we are also looking at globally, we have two key themes that we have been working on. One is we're looking at our decarbonization and smart financing in that. And also we're looking at how Citi as a banking or a financial entity can enable the countries to become net zero. So these two are very close to our heart at the global level, and happy to have a conversation and see how we can collaborate on that.
So we will
take it offline. We'll take it offline. We'll come.
Okay. So since two of them want to ask a question, and I'm just yes, just one more. Yeah.
I'm a founder of Space Tech, so I would like to know if any of you have the provision to fund the Space Techs.
So we might not directly talk about funding, but I'll be happy to connect offline. There are some ideas I'll be happy to share with you on Space Tech.
Right. So, we are sector agnostic with the sense that, we've worked with the likes of, say, Astrom Technologies, we've worked with likes of Labs, which have been pioneers in areas of space, tech, defense, etc. Again, as Madhurima said, the funding aspect is handled slightly differently, but I would urge you to look at some of the government initiatives which do provide funds and grants for such very, very unique ideas. One such is the Startup India Seed Fund, which enables you to apply to up to 3 incubators across the country. And you can pick and choose which ones are very close to your areas of work. And within a very short period of time, you should definitely hear back from them. That's a wonderful scheme that I would definitely recommend all entrepreneurs to potentially tap into.
And ma'am, you are at the right forum. You are with KSM. I think you get a larger support, and they will also help you with other connections and networking. And at whatever stage, if we can do some kind of help there, we'll be happy to work with you on that. And to sort of summarize the discussion that we had around Industry 5.0, I just will leave you with a comment that the tweet that stayed with me from Elon Musk was very interesting when he talked about how over-reliance on AI did not yield the kind of results, and he leaves it with a very interesting note. He says, humans are underrated. I think that's something that we all need to appreciate. Humans are underrated, and probably we need to get humans at the center of each and every technology conversations and not just leave technology at the center alone, right? I think with that note, I'll thank you all for being patient audience here. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you.